Hi, I heard recently that any foreign business wanting to do business in Iraq has to register with two ministries. And the person who said it said the Ministry of Commerce is one, but didn't know the other one. Is that
Ministry
accurate?
of Trade, and it translates the same, and Ministry of Interior.
Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Interior.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm Tom Matera from the Middle East Policy Council, and we're happy to publish your article.
Oh, thank you so much.
Which I recommend to everyone. Other than this question of whether the federal government recognizes or doesn't recognize Kurdish contracts, what are the benefits and disadvantages of doing business in Kurdistan for oil companies? And number two, what do you expect from the third auction regarding natural gas?
Sure. That's a great question. I'd say to the extent that they want to be involved there, I think a lot of the smaller, I wouldn't say smaller because they're still large companies, Talisman Oil from Canada is involved in Kurdistan, and they probably would not be able to be pre-approved for the federal tenders. So a lot of these, I guess, I don't want to call them second tier because they're great companies. A lot of these companies that became involved in Kurdistan knew that they weren't going to be pre-approved in Iraq, but still wanted to play the play. That's the main reason, I think, is just opportunity. But then that's only for the oil company itself. There could be a whole other presentation on investment in Kurdistan because it is that different. And it is, I think, there are not as many trends, there aren't as many goals, and there are also less obstacles. And the number one obstacle is, if we can't talk about it enough, is just the improved security situation up there. You can't compare the two. So that's a great question, and I guess to the extent, just to end on this point, to the extent that these smaller mid-sized companies are being involved there, it's probably because they weren't approved for the bid rounds down south.
What about the natural gas auction?
Oh, the third round. We haven't really seen that come to play yet. I think the consulting company that the Iraqi government hired hasn't been tasked with it yet, and they're still coming back with the contract, and so we're probably going to see what that looks like. It's only natural gas, as you said. It's not petroleum. When you're in the early stages, I think the cards are pretty close to the chest. But I think it'll if we've learned from experience in the first round, the second round was that much better. And if we've learned from the first and second round, the third round will be that much better. But just the amount of infrastructure in all of these rounds, even to begin to offload stuff, is just years away. I mean, a whole pipeline needs to be built for the petroleum, and that's the same for the natural gas. So now we have two pipelines to build.
My question is very simple. To what extent do you recommend local partnerships in Iraq?
It depends on what you're trying to do.
Medium-sized business. And I know you have to, if it's in oil industry, but what if it's in real estate?
That's a great question, and I really like the way you phrase that, because CPA Order 1 removed the foreign ban on foreigners being involved in corporations in Iraq. And a lot of these companies that I deal with just look at that and say, oh, we can do it. But then your question was better. It said, how can we do it better and work with people? And I really like that. But I would say it's crucial, and depends on what kind of industry you want to. A good Iraqi partner can mean everything, and especially in the real estate investment game, you have to have one. I think in other jurisdictions in the Middle East, Kuwait and Saudi, you're beholden to these local agents. You're beholden to these individuals. Here you aren't, and so I think there could be that relationship could be strengthened.
Gentleman in the back here.
I'm Ed Mickey with American Arabic News Agency. Do you see any special treatment for Iranian companies operating in Iraq? Are they being treated differently? Do they have any special privileges given their old relationships with people in power now in Iraq?
Iranian?
The Iranians, yes.
Oh,
Iranian companies and businessmen.
Yeah. Well, technically under CPA Order 1, there shouldn't be. Whether the individual in the Ministry of Trade or Ministry of Commerce deals with that, that's a different story. I haven't really been involved in many Iranians investing in Iraq. We were contacted by one salesperson, and it just didn't pencil out. But I know, based on the law, there shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, we've
of questions. Can we take two at a time? There's a gentleman here, and you go first, and then you can.
Hassan Shaitali from DOD. You talked about local cement production. We've seen the success in foreign investment in the cement in Iraq. Why do you think it hasn't succeeded as much in other industry, in other sectors like the oil and electric and all the other sectors? Is the Iraqi government enforcing different conditions on other sectors like they have in cement?
Well, cement production is a unique industry. We've been involved in many of these deals. I know up in the north, there's one such deal, and the government is actually paid in cement, and the government has an incentive to make the thing work that much better. And if you look at the daily balance sheet, so much goes out on trucks to Turkey or the rest for sale, and then a certain amount goes to the government. And so I think there's an incentive by the government to make those work because they actually need that crucial element for their infrastructure. So I think that's probably the main reason, is they actually have an incentive in its production.
Over here. Roxana Faley, I work for the World Bank. I have two quick questions for you. One in follow-up to the Kurdistan issue. If this applies, if your viewpoint applies to sectors beyond oil and gas, so if there are potential breach of contract issues for someone operating in infrastructure, for example. And the follow-up is, I've heard you talk a lot about how private companies need to overlook the obstacles. How much are they willing to play? Well, what are these foreign companies doing to mitigate risks? Are there roles for kind of systematic risk mitigation for entities such as OPIC or MIGA? What's being done?
Sure, that's a great question. They do as much as they can to mitigate the risk. Working with security companies is probably the number one thing they do to mitigate the risk. And they don't offer just security. They offer a variety of different consulting capacities. Probably the main one that people take advantage of is just a due diligence on every single Iraqi party that they come in contact with. And just to give you a quick example of a corporation that we're not involved with, FedEx just pulled out of Iraq because the company that was managing the airports, they couldn't determine the ownership of. And they said, listen, we have to use this company that we just can't figure out who owns it. And they said, you know what, the DOJ is just too active in this role. The FCP violation is probable. And so listen, it's just not worth it to do business. So I think working with a security company, a due diligence, research, understand the target market is being an expert on the target market, beyond just your normal understanding of a developing economy is probably the number one way you can mitigate risk.